Hi, Namaste, and welcome to Breakout with me, Abha. Thank you so much for watching. We are committed to bring to you over here people who have been there and done that, the mavericks, the change makers, the empowered men and women who are willing to share their insights and tell us how to break out of stuff that we find limiting and break into things that we find absolutely necessary for us. Because from them we learn that there is only one rule to life, and that is that there are no rules to life. We just make them up all of the way. So my guest today is an authority on the wide-ranging future of work issues impacting companies and workers alike. She's the founder and workforce innovation specialist of FlexCell Network. Several years ago, she found herself confronting a problem that we've all faced at some point and which has become central to modern life. She had two kids, 3-year-old and 10-year-old children, who were always complaining that they never saw her and struggling to strike a balance. She started to look for a job or a situation in which she could work lesser, stay home more, and be home on the weekends, and landed a job as a principal at a boutique executive search firm, though she had spent her career in strategy and finance related business roles. So a lot of her peers shared the same plight, and she was convinced that something needed to be done about that, and she decided to set up a company called FlexCell Network, which started out this matchmaking of companies and workers wanting flexible jobs. Please welcome Sophie Wade, the founder of FlexCell Network. Sophie, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I am doing very well, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. It's such a pleasure to have a conversation with you.
I'm quite fascinated what you decided to do thanks to your own situation of looking for something to do in a flexible environment, either a flexible job or to make make yourself more flexible. Tell us about that story. Tell us about that space where this all started.
Well, I'd always been working a fixed full-time job, so 9 till 5. It was more like 8:30 until 7. And as you said, that my daughter who was actually just turned 9, was 3 at the time, and she was had a voice finally, and was complaining that she never saw me. And my son, who was 10, was like, Mommy, can't you get a half job? And I was like, okay. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I think what I'd like to try and do just for now is to try and find something that's 3 days a week, just to have a little bit more time, a little bit more space, and, to make everything be able to fit in.
Yeah.
And so and I actually then started working for this company, as you mentioned, 3 days a week, very intense 3 days a week, but it gave me that extra time to get all the errands done and all the other things done that mothers and, families have to get done. And so it did, yes, free me up for the weekend to actually enjoy with my kids, with my family. And that made all the difference in the world. As a result, I then started realizing, whilst I was, enjoying the job, from a sort of philosophical point of view, I started kind of going, well, hang on a second, there must be a lot of people like me who have that kind of situation, who want to try and find something different. And so I started doing research. And the first book I read was a book called On Ramps and Off Ramps by a woman called Sylvia Ann Hewlett. And it's really about a lot of women who off ramp from their corporate jobs in order to, because there hasn't been the flexibility to do other things. And I read that and I thought, oh, this is a women's issue. And then the more I researched, the more I read, the more I realized that actually it was a flexibility issue, and it had nothing to do with women or men. It was really that everybody should have more flexibility.
Right. So now you put this FlexCell network together, which helps corporations to maximize the benefits and minimize the disruption in their transition to the new work environment. So this flexible kind of environment. On the other hand, you're also helping employees and independent workers adapt and start to manage their new diversified and independent flexible careers. How does it work?
Yes.
How does it work? Now, you had to give me a little bit of a background and a peep into how does this really work? Because this sounds unreal. When I was reading about it and I saw you doing it, but I said no, this is a little bit unreal. But let Sophie answer that for me.
So the focus of the company really, in terms of honestly where our revenues come from, is from corporations. However, I care in order to really help our corporations. We need to have an understanding of how the individuals, how the professionals who are working in the organizations, or the freelancers and independent contractors who are also working for the corporations, and that second group is getting much larger, and so the ability for us to be able to understand all the different types of workers, the struggles that they're going through to try and transition to a different way of working is important also in order to be able to help the corporations. Right. So I also do a lot of speaking for audiences, which are, I'm speaking at a big conference called Make Work Fit Life, right, which is on May the 12th. And that's all for both current and returning professionals in order to help them sort of work out how they can make everything fit together. Because it's really not easy. Most people, if you sort of taking some sort of broad statements about certain generations, boomers and Xers, which are sort of the boomers are sort of over 50, and Generation X are between 35 and 50. And both of those generations, certainly in this country, have grown up basically with no choices. Work was a place that you went to. Right. You went at a certain time, you were told what to do, and then you left, and then life happened after work, always before work. And you didn't have much choice. So now when I've hundreds and hundreds of people, I've said, if you could have the perfect job, what would it look like? They have no idea. Because we never had those, the idea kind of like, well, if you could work X number of days a week rather than 5, what would that be? Wow. How much do you really need to work? How much do you want to work? And so it's a real process. And for somebody who's returning and trying to come back into the corporate workforce, having been working in the home, again, it's the same thing, kind of like, what is the actual sort of life combination, your optimal working profile that you would like to set up that would make everything work? And it's very hard.
Right. I believe so because, and what you do at Flexcel is redefining this whole environment from the perspective of the corporate as well as from the perspective of the employees. And and that is a transition. That's like almost like a disruption, So you're trying to just integrate this entire thing into something which is their own system. So you say you do things, you make them do things on their own terms. So how do you work with your clients? How does this work?
It really is incredibly customized per company, the types of jobs, the type of setup they have, do they have a distributed workforces, or has everybody been working in the office, and maybe they might like to allow some of their people to work from home? How would that work from a technology basis as well as scheduling basis? Right. So it's really very specific. One of the biggest challenges about where we're going in the workplace, which is being disrupted, so we're just trying to help to smooth that transition, is that it's really very specific to every single company, the different types of people they have, the different roles that they have, and as I said, where people are located. And so that's what makes it hard. So really, we go into every single company with a different kind of like, okay, so and it's hard at this point because it's still early days to have, quote, best practices. Right. It's really about we sort of do an evaluation first and say, on all these different, for all these different aspects of the future of work, which are to do with culture, to do with, where are they in terms of implementing workplace flexibility? How do they view a hierarchy? Where is their workforce? How distributed they are? The technology needs, all those different things. Then we sort of evaluate them and then help them focus on where we believe and they agree are the priority areas to start with. Right.
So this is things are changing too fast these days. Apart from the fact that what you're doing is obviously different, new, and in the big corporate environments, and a lot of companies are now thinking of using the flexi approach to retain their talent. Because exactly. One of the key resources that every company probably has, most critical and strategic resource. What do you see? You got a lot of research and data around what is going to happen to work transformation, what is happening now and what's going to happen in future from here, maybe in the next 5 years. And how do you help the companies learn about this data to help them achieve their goals?
Well, one of the things that has been happening over the last few years is about workplace flexibility.
Right.
And that's a very important piece of the whole future of work thing, because it's a philosophy as well as a policy. So it's really about an openness to understanding that each of their employees is an individual, has individual strengths, has different optimal working times and style. They don't necessarily know it yet, and that's part of the sort of transition, is to help them understand it, so that they can choose the best workplace flexibility model for them. And really, sort of that's the first thing, because it also this all sort of radiates out from the culture of the organization. And one of the things that millennials have been driving, which is very different, is the fact that they are looking for purpose in this country. They're looking for purpose in their work. Like, I want to feel that my contribution is recognized, and I want to care. I want to understand what this company is doing that is meaningful to me, that is meaningful in the world. And even a company that makes widgets can do that, because, it's making people's lives easier. It's making, the drawers open more easily. Everybody can articulate it in some way. So workplace flexibility and sort of having this attitude to caring about each and every employee in a certain way. And the benefits there are reams of studies to show that if you do implement these, if you do have these type of culture, if you do have workplace flexibility and are recognizing individuals, then they are much happier, they're less stressed, and they are more productive. So, many studies have shown they're more productive by about 1 hour a day. So, through a couple of hours a week to 1 hour a day. So it really makes a big difference. Plus, healthcare costs go down because people are less stressed, because they're not stressing about dealing with an ailing relative or dealing with their children or whatever it might be. So this is the first a key step, is really implementing workplace flexibility correctly. And to be successful, it really means not saying, there are some companies who said, okay, everybody has to work from home. Well, of course, that doesn't really make sense. If you live in New York and you have small children and you're in a small apartment, how are you going to get your work done easily if your toddler is disturbing you doing your work? So it has to be on an individual basis, and that's hard for big companies. Trying to put these things in place is complicated when you have a lot of people. Right. So that's there are other steps after that they can go to, which will further address some of the issues, which is a changing attitudes to hierarchy, and really having even more distributed workforces that are really expanding upon some of these ideas in ways that really respond to, for example, people can really attract and leverage expert talent wherever it is right now. Right. You can have talent that might be in Jakarta, right. And you just have to deal with that at certain times of day in order to be able to leverage that specific person who is the perfect person for a particular project. Right. These things, if you can work out how to do them and change schedules around a bit so that you can make all of this happen, it's incredibly positive. But it takes a lot of work, because it really is catering to many people in very, very different ways.
Right.
A second thing.
Right. Sorry. Go on, please. Yeah.
The other thing that is sort of troubling, and it's probably the most challenging particularly for large corporations, is it is generally recognized that in this country that the linear, continuous, and compounding career is done. It's over. So that is impactful in the sense that if you're in a large corporation and you had this sort of track that if you were in marketing, you might start out as an associate and then become a manager and then a director, and you'd have this path. Well, if that's gone, and you're in this corporation and nobody's telling you that there's anything else, what are your expectations? What do you believe is actually, what's your motivation? Because you don't have a path. And imagine all these people who are coming into the organizations because they're coming in and they know that career track is not there, but also there's nothing to replace it yet. so you have companies where there are, thousands and thousands of people who don't have any direction, and nobody is taking care of that. Now, this has never actually been HR's, remit. And so they're not staffed up and geared up to do this. They are starting to work on this, but you have, there are many, millennials who are looking for what's called a mentoring culture. And the reason is because they need people to help them through this transition. Right. And the trouble is that most people, nobody is really, nobody knows how to do this yet.
They're not addressing this at the moment, right? I think it's not being addressed at the moment.
Right.
Right. So
exactly.
I was looking at some data and statistics and research. There's almost like the millennials are going to make up almost 70% of the workforce in the coming years. And like you just talked about, what they are facing, or they don't have enough guidance or mentoring to take a path that is good for them. Is there a risk of lower engagement in jobs at some point?
Engagement right now, and this is actually what has been driving a lot of the workplace flexibility over the last couple of years. Engagement, either disengagement or lack of engagement, is at 81% in this country. Mm-hmm. So it can't really get that much worse. So that is actually what is driving people to say, oh my goodness, like what decisions are these people making if they don't really care about their jobs and they don't really care what they're doing? What is the actual value of the corporation and how could that be enhanced if people were doing, we're enjoying what they're doing? Right. So that is actually behind what's going on. So there's a long way to go.
It seems so, like 81% you're saying. So I'm sure I haven't looked at statistics of other countries. I'm sure it's close somewhere, because this is what's changed in the last, I think, decade has been this not a sudden, but this continuous impetus that's come into our spaces through technology and innovation and all kinds of exposure that we're getting. I think that's a lot of that comes from there, and people are asking for more, and they don't know what that more is. So, which is where I think people like yourself who are doing this, this is a great way to let people know where they stand and what they probably can either get, achieve, or want in a certain place, which is very important for everybody's career. So, thanks to you, Sophie, that you're doing this. I heard that, everybody these days is interested in the flexi thing. So do you actually use the flexi strategy to attract talent? Do you help corporates do that? Have corporates begun doing that now?
There are lots and lots of companies. I mean, the latest statistics in this country was, I think it's over 80%. That is not to say that every employee has this. This is that the statistic is about some type of flexibility in the corporation for some people. Right. It does not mean that everybody has it. It does not mean that everybody has the kind of flexibility that they want. And it does not mean it's formalized. So there's a lot of informal flexibility in corporations. And that's fine so far as people are actually being able to work in the ways that they actually need and want. And also that it's not seen as a benefit that they earn. This is actually something that the corporations need to adjust their thinking and many have in order to sort of say, look, if I actually want the most about my employee and therefore I win and productivity goes up, this is something that's actually going to be beneficial strategically. Right. It's not a benefit that I'm giving them and they should feel happy about and thankful about. It's actually going to be best for the corporation. Right. So, but it is challenging to enforce, to sort of implement successfully. And on the other side, there needs to be, as I've said, most people don't have that much awareness about how they work best. So right. I might say, oh my God, I want to be able to work from home, but I might be awful at working from home simply because I might feel really isolated, or that's just not my thing. I might need to be in a work environment, but I just use different hours. But the great thing about workplace flexibility is now it is mandatory in the UK to have the right to request flexibility after you've been working in an organization over 6 months. And it was rolled out over a period of 10 years there. And it was first it was actually the right was given to parents with kids under 6. And then it was extended, I think, to 16 to parents with kids under 16, and then with elder care and caregivers. And now, and as of June of 2014, it was basically made mandatory for everybody. And the reason it was rolled out was because that the statistics showed from study after study after study how much better people performed, how the loyalty, the retention, the engagement, all these things went up. So the good thing is now coming into this country, they actually have this same law, the right to request flexibility, in Vermont and in San Francisco City. Because they're trying to do different things to attract and retain and engage workers. So the studies prove the point, and it's in fact Scott Stringer, who's the comptroller of New York, has been advocating for that for the private sector here, in order that New York can continue to attract top talent. So we'll see. It's coming.
That's good news. That's great. I mean,
Very.
it's happening. It's really good news, right? You at Flexel are catering not just to the you're catering to just every segment in terms of the being consulting for the executive side. The executives, you've created programs to help the corporates understand their needs. You're also doing employee development, right? So
Exactly.
you're dealing with all these. This is pretty wide, but what exactly can people expect when they go up to your site or ask you to work with them? How are they looking at things, and how can you help them in detail? I mean, let's go into a little bit deeper into what exactly is going on there.
Well, in terms of from a corporate side, it really depends, what they're looking for. It could be millennial, sort of retention generally, but often about millennials because they have different needs. They are manifesting different needs and expressing different demands than other generations before them. I don't personally think they are any different, but they have come into the workforce, as you said, with different technology, and that has enabled different ways of working, which they are responding to. So we do an evaluation and really sort of try and understand what the client is looking for. And it may be, one client was really looking to have a very, very cool culture, which resonates profoundly with the employees. But they also then were looking to make sure that their employee benefits were coherent with that. And, not to have, we were basically saying you can't have an amazing culture and then have no parental leave policy because, those two things are not consistent. Right. And the whole point about the culture, it needs to emanate through everything. Right. And also they have a very distributed workforce. And so it was really ensuring that they have very good communication tools, that they have some structure in place. So not structure, frameworks in place. Right. To support people who are working who aren't necessarily used to working in a very distributed environment, because you have to be a self-starter. There's nobody, by your side kind of going, have you done this or have you done that? Or just by virtue of being next to you in the office. So some of these things put in place and just in terms of really giving sort of surrounding support that help. Because they had a very flexible workspace and they had this distributed and people were working from home and remote offices, but sort of putting the other things in place to help them be successful. Another one was to do with, the particular one was to do with millennial retention. And so in that situation, the way that, it was a smaller company. And so the interesting thing about a smaller company is that where we see it going in terms of how people are successful without having this linear career is having the ability to move people around. And so in big corporations, whilst it's complicated, you have a lot of flexibility to move people around because you have many positions. In smaller organizations, you don't. So one of the ways that we use is and I sort of wrote an article on this as well, which said was Me, Myself, and I, Inc. And it's basically looking at yourself as your own little enterprise, whether you're working in a corporation or outside of it. That it's really sort of develop your own personal business plan for yourself as a business, and think about having a look at income versus jobs and how you're going to be successful and how you're going to continue earning revenue, and think about all the time think about, how am I positioning myself? How am I marketing myself? How am I, doing all the essential things around a small business so that you can be successful no matter which company you're working at, or whether you're in a full-time position or a freelance position, or part-time, or whatever it might be. So those are some of the things, this is sort of the ideas that we're communicating to kind of, say, think about yourself, your personal business plan inside the organization. And so it's almost like talent management inside an organization. But what is powerful about that is that it really engages the employee to really think, to one, understand that their employer is really trying to understand them and engage them in the process. And then they get a huge input to sort of share what they would really like to do. Right. So it actually helps the employer as well, because it's not as much work. So they come together. And so, we were looking at these fantastic business plans, the personal business plans that were written in terms of what somebody was saying that they felt their strengths were, and what they wanted to develop, where they felt they had weaknesses, and what they could do about it. And then we were putting some formal and some informal mentoring teams cross department and cross skill and discipline pairings and groups, in order to sort of put in place some of the things that couldn't be done in terms of job rotation, because in a small organization you can't necessarily do that as much. Right. But then if you're sharing skills and mentoring pairs, it means that somebody who might be in more of a marketing or biz dev role can be mentoring somebody who might be more of a finance role. Right. And that they're different perspectives, and both reverse mentoring from a younger person or a less experienced person to an older person. Because everybody needs to understand each other in different ways. So those are some of the ways that we go about it, as well as having workshops for employees to really help them understand, some of the things about some of the building blocks of developing their own personal optimal working profile. Right. Like, how do I work best? When do I work best? I personally work really, really well from 9 to 11 p.m. There's no email, there's no nothing. My kids are in bed, so I'm good to go. And so that I sort of make sure that I can tailor, if I have a piece of work that I really need to focus on, then that's a really good time for me. Right. And it's really helping people understand. I was talking to, I actually, work in a co-working space here. The people who work for us are distributed, and I was talking to one of the guys here, and he said, I work best from 8 till 10 in the morning. So he actually comes in at 10:30, because he doesn't want to lose travel time between in his perfect hour, 2 hours. Right. So really helping people understand when they work best, and then looking at all the different components of their life, where they are in their career, if they have a significant other, or wife or a husband, where their kids are, the different sort of elements of their life and work arc, to see where they are and to see how they can develop the optimal work profile, so that they can then look at how they might build up the different places and ways that they can apply their skills to really create the optimal scenario for them.
That's actually very compelling. I think this must be bringing so much clarity into people's way of either thought or work or themselves. Because I think whenever you talk of career transitions or things to be changed, it's scary for people. And the way you're talking about it, it's sounding like a cakewalk. So
it's not a. Yeah. Well, the first thing I always say actually is, because it is scary and it is very different. And right. So the thing that I always say is, we're all in the same boat. We are all in the same boat. Everybody's going through this. It is not just you. Because that is one of the things that really is, debilitating to some people. It is very unstabilizing. And in fact, like I was saying, millennials want mentoring. Right. Nobody really knows where we're going. Right. I do feel very positive about where we are going, in terms of people being recognized and respected as individuals, people understanding and being able to tailor their work and life and have that all work together and fit together well. Right. It's just not easy when we haven't been used to that. And so it's not a technical term, but I do see the next 5+ years as being pretty messy. The good thing is we're going somewhere that is very powerful and very positive, I believe.
It all
I think
starts with a mess. I think it all starts with a mess. And we can get to a point where it
yes,
doesn't look like one. I think we've all been
right,
through that. So while you say
yes,
that, this transition to the future of work is in progress at the moment. So I was reading through a
very
site
much.
and it says the smartphone ownership in the US is going to be 65%. Millennials will make up of 75% of the US workforce by 2025. 47% of all the jobs will be automated by 2034. So what are the corporations supposed to be prepared for, and what are the professionals supposed to be prepared for, and how can they get now? They can get proactive into understanding what really they need to do from here on.
The most critical thing, I believe, and I spend a lot of time talking and writing about this, is basically to inform yourself. That every individual and somebody as a professional individual and as a corporate employee or whatever, is to try and understand as much as possible, one, about what's going on, and two, about how they work and they want to work. And in terms of individuals, certainly in this country, I talk about income versus jobs, and that's a radical change, because if you're not imagining you're going to have a permanent full-time job, then that is very destabilizing. But if you sort of back up and sort of say, well, how do I want to actually structure this, and what are the different things that I can do, and how can I apply my skills? There are lots and lots of opportunities.
Right.
But the more people sort of inform themselves, the more comfortable they can get with a very different way of working, and they can just then look at the opportunity side of it rather than the challenge and the scariness. So that's a key thing, is really to have more, to sort of get on board. And so, we're always curating articles, writing about it, just trying to give people understanding and suggestions to really, and I'm actually coming out with a book at the end of the year, which is really sort of going to give some tools to people to sort of help them during this transitional period.
That's really nice. So right now we were talking about US, and we've so far been speaking about what do you see happening in this side of the world where I am, Asia, India, and how is it going to change here? What should we
I
be ready
think
for?
I think it's really it applies so differently in different places,
Right.
because of how people use technology. I think that the smartphones, having a powerful computer in the hands of every single person, makes all the difference in the world, because it means that you can do so much from anywhere. In addition, with the software applications and both the software and the applications, it means that you can appear to be a very big business and be tiny, be one person, and different countries and different people will sort of take advantage of that in many, many different ways, which we have yet to sort of see all the creativity and amazing things that can be done. I think, it does make this world very global. And I remember it was even probably 15 years ago where people were starting to, or longer, where people were starting to use people in Australia and Asia on security night watch through cameras in the US, because that was nighttime, but there was daytime for them.
Right.
So it actually sort of worked perfectly. So there are lots and lots of creative ways that I think we've only just begun to see. I think automation and robots, the last article I just wrote was about robots, and robots in the sense of physically similar looking two-legged robots. And there can be some major disruption if the majority of what they're used for is to decrease production costs.
Right.
If they're used in the very thoughtful ways, as my personal assistant who can go and get my coffee from the cafe down the street and come back and do some of those things that mean I can actually do more of the stuff that I want to do and be more productive, fantastic. So, and they do see the prediction now, BCG and SAP did some projections, and they see that commercial, i.e. Sort of personal cleaning robots and personal assistant type robots are going to be mass adopted probably by 2025.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to have my robot personal assistant, which will be fantastic. And in
That
fact,
sounds sounds like
well, there actually is a service here. I think it's called Amy.
Uh-huh.
And one of my friends said that he was emailing back and forth with this assistant called Amy, and only afterwards found out it was actually not a physical robot, but it was an application. So there are a lot of things. I think we do have to be thoughtful about how we take on some of this technology now, and don't use it just to sort of drive costs down, but use it in very thoughtful ways. And those could be extremely interesting and exciting.
Yeah, I think it can also be very empowering in how we are able to integrate all this stuff into our life and work, and our personal spaces. I think that's going to be exciting from now on. We're seeing so many changes happening all over the world, and obviously life has just turned downside up. I mean, people say it's going to turn upside down, it's gone downside up, and we're seeing so many things happening. And I'm
Yes.
looking forward because I talk to my kids, and every second day they come up with something new, and I keep wondering, I mean, how much am I supposed to integrate stuff into my life? And my daughter is just 12, and she keeps coming, try this, mom,
Right.
try this, mom, and try this, mom. And so I'm thinking, okay, like I am probably like, not fully equipped mentally to be able to go through all this, but we are learning.
But I think some of the ones that really stick, then you kind of go, oh, okay, that one I will pay
Yeah,
attention to. All the other one stuff, it doesn't matter.
true. So I think that's what I'm saying. It's so
Yes.
important today to be able to be to keep yourself well informed, and be
Yes.
able to see what's the right thing for you to do and integrate that into your space, whichever space, life or work. So that's really exciting. So I think you're doing a great job, Sophie. I love the fact that you got into a situation, you were in a situation, and then you got out of it to help a lot of other people and expand this in a way that probably is helping a lot of people to understand that flexi is the way to be from here on, and the right kind of flexi, not just flexi. So it's going to be the right kind of,
Exactly. The one that works for you, and that's
yes,
the
the one that
difference.
works for
Yes.
you, and then Sophie helps you get there to figure what is that it that works for you. So thank you very much,
Exactly.
Sophie. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you so much for your time. I wish you good luck, and I hope that people see this the right kind of flexi.
My pleasure. It's been a delight talking to you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you very much.